He's the landscape architect. I think I talked to him.
I mean, it's awfully small for them to even see it because it's really being
Told
told.
Glenn Cage to visit. He's running two businesses. Then he came up to me at a party the other night and said, "Talk to me. Tell me what I have to do." I explained to him what it is. I think I give a pretty accurate description of the work going on. That's one way I can have some impact on the city. So I think he's going to throw his hat in the ring. Pleasure to throw it around. I'm a landscape architect. Really? Interesting. We're going to have 2 or 3 vacancies. Lisa Windsor to see them.
Oh, yes, I can.
And then I turn out here after that. Before it was going.
For my presentation, I already created a PowerPoint before I got the template, so mine is completely different.
Yours would be
Yes,
distinguished and different.
Very, very different. It's okay.
So, is it okay if I put my stuff here, or do you need this for
No,
someone
no,
else?
you're fine, because David's coming in, he's
So
gonna
I
sit
can,
right there.
I can put my, oh, so we have enough.
So every time we want to give a presentation, we have to move to the seat
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Like that.
So they're now calling North Bay Racket Club. I see.
You have 13 or how many copies?
Assuming the machine actually counted and did that.
Or the machine keeps running after you walk away from it.
It's 3 o'clock on May 15th. Today is the Architectural Advisory Committee meeting. We asked everyone to silence their cell phones, and also if you could seriously silence them. Planning Director, if we can have roll call.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Member Fredericks?
Present.
Member Lockyer is excused. Member Purnell?
Present.
Member Rotman?
Present.
Member Sequoia Jensen is excused. Vice Chair Cassidy is excused. And Chair Song.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. May we have the staff report on the posting of the agenda?
Madam Chair, the agenda was posted on Thursday, May the 11th. This meeting has been noticed and posted in accordance with state law.
Thank you. Does the committee have any revisions to the agenda? Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda.
Okay, anyone second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Thank you. Right. On consent calendar, we'll be reviewing the meeting minutes of April 1st. Does the
Madam Chair, public comments first
Oh,
before consent.
I'm sorry. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Architectural Advisory Committee on the consent calendar and other agenda items. Any items that are not in the agenda, if you'd like to care to share any comments, this is the time to do so. Is anybody here not related to any of the cases today? If not, we'll move on to review the meeting minutes of April 1st. Any revisions? Was everybody here, actually? Okay. It was, I'm sorry, May 1st. May 1st. No? No comments? Okay.
I
Right,
move to
motion
accept-
to accept.
I move to accept the
Member
meeting
Robert?
minutes.
Thank you. Anyone second?
I'll second.
Member Gary? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, under new business, we would like to propose for, oh, maybe not. Brandon, Ken is not here yet. Oh, that's Ken, okay. We're proposing for new business item number 5 to move forward ahead. So we can do all the signage issues all together. Okay, does anybody have anybody accept that change? Any motion to accept that change?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Okay, anyone second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Okay, so under new business, welcome Ken. So we have Rosian B. LLC for Planned Development District and a minor architecture application to construct a soundstage and outdoor music venue at the Monroe Hotel. Staff report.
Bear with me just 1 minute.
Yes.
How do I put this in?
I don't know why it does it. And then you push this arrow to move forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a planned development district and a minor architectural application for construction of a soundstage and an outdoor music venue at the Monroe Hotel, which is currently being rebranded as the Infusion Beach Hotel, located at 1900 North Palm Canyon Drive. The site on which this venue is being proposed is an existing hotel that was built in, I believe, the late 80s. The project is encompassing both interior space and exterior space, and I'm going to see if I can use this pointer. So,
It's in
you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So, I got to learn how to talk and chew gum here at the same time. So this is the current parking area for the hotel, and the hotel is comprised of this L-shaped configuration of buildings. Currently, the applicant has removed the existing pool and has constructed a new pool, and the outdoor venue space that is being proposed is really this area around the pool deck. So this is a bit hard to see, but you've got this in your packets as well. Like technology is thwarting me here. Okay, so the way this is configured, in this area that's currently an open space yard, if you will, is a ticketing and security building. Then working around this side of the site, there is a bar, then there are a series of cabanas, and then there is another bar here that's freestanding, and then this is a food service building here, basically like a kitchen food service kind of thing. The applicant has constructed the pool that you see here right now. The reason this project is being submitted as a PD is because this is a hotel that's in the C1 and R3 zone districts, and when you have hotels in C1, they have a development standard that is a bit more stringent, requiring greater setbacks. So the project is going to be seeking relief from the development standards to allow building in that front yard setback along Palm Canyon Drive. This is the landscape plan, and essentially the landscaping for the project is remaining unchanged. Where the landscaping has died off or been impacted by the construction activities, they will be replacing them with like species and like sizes. And where there is new landscape area, which primarily occurs in the small open spaces that are along the Palm Canyon frontage, they're proposing Carissa as a kind of an infill species there to get some green and some texture into those areas. And then there will also be just a freshening up of the decomposed granite. The elevations are not necessarily the best way to explain this project. I want to step up to the board a minute and walk you through the three-dimensional drawing that's up there. But in essence, what you're looking at are a series of one-story buildings. Both the security ticketing building, the food service, the bar, and the cabanas are all essentially one-story building. The sound stage, which is an elevated stage, if you will, is roughly 3 to 4 feet above the grade of the pool and will have a shade canopy above it. The shade canopy will be seen from Palm Canyon. These are some details of the actual buildings themselves that are being proposed. Within the first floor of the existing building, on the easterly portion of it, there are some laundry areas and other facilities that are being renovated that will become larger sized toilet facilities for the venue. This is the existing condition as you see it today along Indian Canyon Drive. I think this is Indian Canyon. No, that's Palm. I'm sorry, that's Palm. And this is what is being proposed. So the wall that you see there that's kind of a beigey pink colored wall is actually the back side of these proposed new buildings. If you look down in this area is where the sound stage will be. This is the ticketing building here. And then the restaurant and other bar areas are behind. This is a view of the same property in a different site, and then this is how it will look. So the sound stage, again, is happening in this area here. Now, this doesn't show the actual shade canopy above, but it would be sticking up above the height of the adjacent building by about 3 to 4 feet. In your packets, you'll find this, which is the proposed color scheme. They'll be repainting the entire building. If you notice on these elevations, let me step back a minute, if I may. The various accent colors you see are happening in those small emblems along the top of the wall, which basically give it a little bit of visual interest as opposed to simply being a plainer wall. This is an artist rendering of the pool area showing the cabanas. If you see in this image where there is a small sign toward the back left, that's where the sound stage is. And then immediately, directly forward in your vision is where one of the bar buildings will be, and then off to the right is where the security and ticketing building is proposed. The pool that you see is already been permitted under a separate permit, and they are working to complete that at this time. This is another view looking toward the cabanas. This is looking north on the site, and the building that you see on the left is the freestanding bar. And that concludes the slideshow. As noted in your staff report, beginning on with the analysis on page 3, we discuss some of the characteristics of the project in terms of your normal review characteristics of mass, scale, and building design. The buildings on this project, both the existing ones and the new ones, are of no particular architectural style. They're very simple volumes, and the primary building color is a neutral color. The architectural review criteria from Zoning Code Section 9404 begins on page 5. And as we've noted, while this does exist in an area that is all C1 zoning, hotels that are in C1 are required to have larger front yard setbacks. And in this case, as we looked at the way that this hotel lies within the context of those existing hotels in the same side of the street, we felt that this was not in context with those hotels which have larger setbacks. I'd note in item 3, the walls that would typically surround a swimming pool, which the code requires to be 5 feet in height, have been required by the county health department to be higher because the adjacent wall of the Billy Reed's restaurant poses a potential climbing hazard that if they were to build a low wall, one could simply climb up on the pilasters and jump over. So the county has required those walls be 5 feet from the top of the pilasters of the existing wall, which yields a wall height that's about 9 feet in height along the, that's going to be along the south elevation, I think, of the south property line. As noted, what we're seeing here is a PD that's seeking some deviations in the zoning standards. The applicant has also brought in today, which was at your positions, this set of diagrams or photos of the existing conditions along Palm Canyon to kind of help accentuate their feeling that there are examples of buildings in this part of town which do come out to the sidewalk, and they've given examples of Rick's restaurant and the Dink's restaurant, which is further to the north. The applicant is in the audience if you have any questions, and I'm available as well. Thank you.
Okay, questions for staff? Member Robert.
Thank you, Ken. Couple of questions. You said the perimeter wall is about 9 feet high?
That's correct. That's correct.
And so the raised DJ stage is, how high is that above, you know?
It's about 3 to 4 feet in height above the pool deck.
3 to 4. So we're talking about 5 to 6 foot height of the wall behind the DJ. Is that right?
Slightly higher than the, yeah. The issue where the wall height becomes larger than what you would normally see is really happening, it's being driven, if you will, by the existing wall that is in Billy Reed's parking lot.
Okay.
So that existing wall has a certain height to it. The health department wanted that 5-foot minimum from that point up. But the wall along Palm Canyon has a height of about 9 to 10 feet because it is also the back wall of the ticketing building, the bar building, and this, those portions that come out through the curb.
And what are the typical heights of the individual buildings within the pool area? Are they 9, 10 feet?
They're
tall?
roughly 9 or 10 feet, that's correct.
The other question I have is about the remote parking. In your staff report, if I read it correctly, it said that they are looking at a potential site for remote parking.
That's
Has
correct.
that been secured?
Not at this time. They're still working with us. We'll be having a meeting with them later this week to go over some of the project proposals that they're putting forth.
Okay, thank you.
Member Gary, do you have any questions for staff?
Yeah, just one. Do you have any information regarding the setback that they're proposing for the buildings as compared to the setback of this white wall that we see in the picture?
I can't give you the dimension of the existing wall. I don't know it, but I do know that the code requires that hotels in this zone be set back at least 30 feet. So I suspect it's in that general vicinity. And when the new building is built, most of it will lie essentially on the property line, with some portions of it that do undulate back and forth.
This white wall looks a lot closer, that's what I was wondering.
When you say the white wall,
It's a
Gary,
white
which one do you...
wall right along the sidewalk,
It's the one that has the
Are you talking
decorative-
about this existing wall?
the decorative,
Oh, yeah, right there, yeah.
right there.
Yeah, okay. The wall that's being built is being built on top of this,
I see.
or has been built on top of this.
I see.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yep.
Ken, have you had a conversation with the applicant where the new addition that is proposed on Palm Canyon, if the design could be such a way that there could be a step up? So instead of starting at 11 feet, the building itself could be at 8 and then go to 10 and then go to 11?
No, we haven't talked about a stepped facade like that.
Okay, okay. All right, okay, thank you. No other question? Okay, is the applicant present? Okay, your name and address?
My name's Donald Sanders. I'm representing Infusion Beach Hotel. I'm also the general contractor building the project.
I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Donald Sanders.
Okay.
Please also sign in here too when you're done.
Donald, do you have a presentation on this project, or are you?
I would like to just address some of the questions that have come up.
That would be great.
The wall along Palm Canyon, to address what Member Fredericks just asked, starts at the Billy Reed side, at the southern portion of it. There's 60 feet of the wall that would be only 9 feet high. There's a 22-foot section on the back side of the bar that would be 10 feet high, and then another 22-foot section on the back side of the security building that would be 11 feet high. So the wall would step, and if you look at the picture that Ken had up earlier, if you notice the octagon, the colored octagons, they start out near the top of the wall on the southern section, and then by the middle, they appear to be down a little bit, and then they get down a little more as the wall itself gets higher or the buildings themselves graduate in height.
So I know you're doing your presentation, but would you mind taking the microphone and showing it to us on that rendering? Or on the screen, yeah.
This portion of the wall from here to here is about 60 feet long, and it would be 9 feet high. This section behind the bar is about 22 feet long, would be 10 feet high, and this section, which is now diagonal, it doesn't have a step in it like this. If you look at the package that's part of the staff report, you'll see that this is just a diagonal wall. This is 11 feet high. The reason this is 11 and this is 10 is to hide the HVAC equipment that will be on the roof. So there's actually, the interior of the building would only have an 8'6" ceiling and then a foot of joist space, but we've raised the parapet around it to hide the HVAC equipment so that it will not be visible from the street.
Okay.
And then this portion of the wall here is built in the same location as the previous wall that was there, but the wall that was on the property did not conform to the health department standards of a non-climbable 5-foot-high wall as required around a pool barrier, which it's now been replaced with a 6-foot wall that is non-climbable, so it's conforming to the health department standards. If I may go into some other details, the pictures that that we brought today that Ken distributed to you shows Rick's and the Days Inn across the street, which is built to the property line in some areas. Rick's restaurant specifically is built right up to the sidewalk. The Days Inn only has an 8-foot setback from the sidewalk along its entire property along Palm Canyon. The only two properties that will not be consistent with the current trend of building to the sidewalk are Tova, which is currently closed and not operating, and the Ivy Palm, which is adjacent to our property to the north, which is up for sale currently. Everything else from Vista Chino all the way up to La Escuela, Ken, what's the?
Yes.
La Escuela, are consistent with what we're proposing in our property, is that they come within 10 feet of the sidewalk. The same thing occurs on the western side of Palm Canyon, starting at the Days Inn, all the way down past Tova, again, all the way to Vistachino, the only inconsistent property is Tova. All the rest are set at the property line or just short of it. Adjacent to us to the south is Billy Reed's, which also has actually less of a setback than what we're proposing. They're at about 8 feet, we're at about 10 feet from the sidewalk. But the purpose of the whole project is we propose a possible capacity of 800-person music venue that would operate 35 to 40 weekends a year. The current hotel has 62 rooms at the Monroe and would house approximately 125 people. The majority of the crowd that the events would draw are from out of town and would provide an additional possibly 250 to 350 hotel rooms being occupied on the weekends that we have events. In addition, the restaurants, the economic impact of bringing those kind of people every weekend to the vicinity would be significant to the city, and it would provide a substantial public benefit to have, 35 to 40 events annually that would draw in additional people, additional finances to the area. Are there any other questions I can answer for the members or for the
Yes.
commissioner?
This is the time for any public comment related to this project. See none? Okay, we'll proceed to our questions to you.
Sure.
Okay, any questions for the applicant? Yes, Member Gary.
I'm a bit confused on the location of this wall still. According to Mr. Lyons, it is to be sited exactly where the white ornamental wall is,
Yes.
but in the rendering, it looks much further back than...
If you look at the second to last picture of the package that Ken distributed to you, you can see the existing stucco wall at the bottom of the gray wall.
Is
So
it on
this
the
wall
big
was
one?
built directly on top of the previous non-conforming one.
Is that the 6-foot wall that you were talking about? Is that the 6-foot wall that you were
Yes.
talking about?
Yes, it is.
And are these, is that the 6-foot wall also, or is that,
That wall in the rendering is 9 feet tall.
okay, so
The
that
cur-
is another wall that is past the 6-foot wall, correct?
No, what we're asking as part of your approval and the PDD is to take the existing 6-foot wall that we've already built and increase 60 feet of it to 9 feet high, and then the remaining 44 feet would be increased to 10 and 11
But the
feet.
wall stays in the same location as
That
far
is
as the
correct.
distance from the street. Okay, was any thought at all given to landscape to soften this? Trees, anything to do something with that space along Tom Canyon?
We are fully open, since there's 2 distinguished members that are landscape architects. If you have any suggestions or conditions that you would like to for landscaping, we're completely open to that. But in the discussions with staff, we had a mature landscape area. We would be replenishing what was damaged and leaving it similar to where it is now. But certainly, if you would like additional landscaping, we're open to that.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, Member Randy.
I'm still, I guess, confused about the wall location. If I'm looking at 2 exhibits, we have this one here, which has a low screen wall. Looks like it appears to be 3 or 4 feet from the back of the sidewalk. And similar image here, existing, and then proposed, it appears that wall is set back quite a bit. And it's kind of similar to what Gary was asking, so
May I come up and show you one of the drawings?
maybe you could show up there for the public.
It's on the new package.
Do you want one of the drawings pulled out, or you want to work off the screen?
It's not, you won't be able to put it on the screen, but if I can just show you on this one here. This here is the existing wall. Where you see in your package, this wall here is this wall right here.
Okay, I understand. I'm confused on the way it looks like on site. On site, it looks like that wall is quite a ways back from curb, and it doesn't appear here.
The reason is on here is this drawing, which comes from the city's drawings, from the APN drawing, is the original setback was set at 41 feet from the center of Palm Canyon, and Caltrans has requested a 50-foot setback. So this wall, as it appears now, is at 50 feet from the center line setback.
How does your new proposed wall relate to what I see here?
See the bottom of this wall right here where you see the stucco?
Yes.
That's this stucco right here. This wall was built directly on top of that wall. We removed the
I understand
non-conforming climbable portion.
I guess where I'm confused, and I'm sorry, is then you look at this, and there is no similar setback between that and this. So
I-
that's why I'm confused.
I think it's just
Is there
an
artistic
optical
liberty?
illusion, but the wall is built in exactly the same
Do you have
spot.
anything showing us where it actually is?
The wall is actually built right along here. This is the wall right there.
So it's right at the property
So
line.
where's
It's
the
right at the property
sidewalk
line.
and where's the landscape?
This is the landscape area, this is the sidewalk area.
Yeah, it sure is deceiving to me.
Yeah.
If I could
Yeah.
interject, maybe to clarify, I think what you told me is that this wall in the photograph is going to be removed, and this would be the location of the new walls.
Well, the top portion, if you look at, if I may, if you look at the top portion of the wall right here which was climbable,
Donald, yeah.
okay.
So Donald, hold on.
So landscape
Hold on
plan
just a
is-
second.
Go ahead.
So what's going on right now is, Randy, the 4-foot wall that you're talking about, what they did is they removed the brickwork.
Yeah.
Okay, and they kept the two width of the block wall, and then from there they built on, and then now they're proposing it, the final height to be 9 feet.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, that wall is currently located on the face of the property line.
That is correct.
Okay. The renderings, because we have all professional artistic eye, it does look further away than what it's supposed, I mean, what...
Yes, it does.
Okay, all right. So, having said that, now we understand where your final wall is going to be located, and we understand your sort of context within the neighborhood of what other business buildings also look like.
Yes.
Okay, all right,
Thank you.
yeah. There
Yeah, it
should
just
be-
seems much closer, so that's the
I agree.
clarification I was looking
I
for.
agree. Yes, Member
So
Robert.
we
Oh, I'm
could
sorry.
rely on Ken's help on showing the actual location on the landscape plan. That's a,
On L1.
Yes.
That's a good one.
It is on L1.
yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
You want to see that, Fred?
I think I'm good. Thank you, Ken.
Member-
I'm not.
Okay.
But
Member
further to
Robert.
that point, if you look at the line of the proposed buildings, which is this, it jogs in and out and all that, that I don't see on the rendering. To me, it looks like it's a straight run with one little jog and then a larger jog.
If
And-
you
yeah.
look at the rendering from the other direction, it's a little more distinct, but if you look at the portion, the higher portion to the left, behind the palm tree,
Yeah,
there you go. That is diagonal along the property line, and if Ken will hold this up, that portion is right here. It's shown here jogging on the landscape plan because at that time we hadn't revised the landscape plan to conform with the property line. But it actually goes from this corner to this corner as a diagonal, so that little corner right there is not,
so the building wall actually
Is-
is actually angled.
it's angled to match
To match the property line, okay.
Then it does step back right here at the back of the bar.
Right.
And that's the section you see a little bit lower, 1 foot lower, this would be
Okay.
10 feet. And then it jogs back out here and then follows the property line here for the 60 feet.
Okay.
And this port, from here to here was the existing wall. This wall is built on top of the existing wall. Then this here actually followed where the existing wall was previously, but that wall was demoed to just put up the 6-foot wall. And then same thing here.
And then the section behind the raised platform and the property line, no, to the south. What's happening there?
This is a 32-inch high concrete deck with a handicap ramp that feeds it from the back right here.
Right.
And then this will be a cabana area or a bottle service area, and this will be the stage DJ area. This is all level at 32 inches above the other pool deck.
Okay.
And that's why we're requesting a 9-foot wall here for security purposes and for sound deadening purposes.
Okay.
To have that wall in this section 9 feet. It also will match, unfortunately, this wall here is a full 9 feet up because the pilaster in this corner, which you can see in this last drawing, these are the pilasters at Billy Reed's, and we were required to go 5 feet above them. So the wall right here in this corner is the tallest on the south side.
Okay.
So when we do the 9 feet here, it'll actually match this. If you've driven by the site, you'll notice that the side wall is 3 feet higher than this wall because we don't have permission on the Palm Canyon side to go to full height yet. But that one corner pilaster is the highest one, so that wall had to go up a little higher there.
So again, the area just west of the raised platform, on the drawing, it shows, it looks like the wall going at an angle that's parallel to the property line.
It
and
is.
that there's a gap between the property line and that wall. Or is this drawing
The
incorrect?
stage actually pours right against the
All
wall
right, so-
itself.
So what's confusing for, I think, most of us is that the plan isn't current to what the,
Well, you're looking at the landscaping plan.
well, even this has got the same thing. Oh, no, this has
doesn't.
been corrected.
This is corrected. This
Okay.
is your handicap ramp right here. This is the wall and the stage. Then the wall jogs in behind the bar.
Got it, okay.
And then the only part and then this is, here is diagonal as it should be. This is all completely correct,
Okay, I understand now. Thank
if you
you.
look at the site plan.
Thanks.
Okay, Donald, let me ask you, as far as the program, if I buy a ticket to this event, how do I enter the pool area?
You would be entering, if you were a hotel guest, there are 3 gates that a hotel guest would be coming in on, one on the southeast portion of the property. Here, if you guys don't mind, it's just easier if I just come over here and do it. There's a gate that will be right here. I'm sorry, let's go to the site plan, not the landscaping plan. Okay, there's a gate that's going to be right here. So any of the hotel guests will have card key entrance to the gate right here. There's also a gate here that the hotel guests will have a card key entrance to. And there's a gate,
So, yeah, go right
okay,
there.
okay. So let me get down here.
So what happens if I'm not a hotel guest?
If you're not a hotel guest, you would come along here. This is the entry here, and there is a gate right here. This will be the ticket window right here. And you would purchase a ticket and be able to go through the gate right here.
Okay,
And this will be the queuing area for people that will be buying tickets and queuing up to go into the venue.
okay, got it, all right. Okay, good. Other questions? Member
Can you describe to us what we're going to see from Palm Canyon on the stage location, a cabana?
Ken, do you have
Ken, can you go to
And
the
so
the
on and
next
so
picture
forth.
of that?
A2?
You looking for a site plan?
No,
it's your elevations.
the other rendering picture.
Sorry.
Oh,
That one. So the right-hand portion of the octagon wall, for lack of a better term, the other side of that is the stage. You won't be able to see any of the stage, but there will be a shaded awning.
I'm interested in what are we going to see shade-wise?
so
or
hold on a
canopy
second,
wise?
hold on. Can you go to A2? A02? Because we have to base it also on what you have submitted? Okay.
Well,
Is that A02?
Just a minute. Yeah, that's AO2.
All right, so on 4, if you look at elevation 4.
if you look up here, you can see where the canopy is showing right here and right here. This is the shade canopy for the DJ, and this is the shade canopy for the bottle service tables that would be there.
Do we see that? Am I seeing that?
Nine feet.
Oh. Yeah,
So
it's not
these are
shown
nine-
here, yeah.
yeah.
And it looks like it's peeking up over the wall, how many feet?
2 feet at the most. The wall would be 6 feet above the stage area and an 8-foot canopy, so at most you would see 2 feet of it.
And architecturally, what are we going to look at on shade?
It's going to be a powder-coated brushed aluminum frame with a Sunbrella fabric awning on it.
Is that a permanent structure, or is it,
It'll be bolted to the deck, so semi-permanent. It could be removed,
but
but
it's going to stay there between events?
definitely.
And so we'll see activity on the stage or not? You said 6-foot difference in height, right, between stage and...
If you had a couple basketball players on the stage, you might be able to see their heads from Palm Canyon, some activity there. We could make the wall higher. I believe as a one-story, we're allowed to go 12 feet. I was trying to keep we were trying to keep the impact minimal and only asking for 9. But if it was okay with staff and if it went through on the PDD, we could do it 11. But I figured the opposite was what would be looked for, is that less impact rather than more. But certainly we could make the wall 11 feet high all along.
Is that the worst case scenario in height, the stay, or the shade, or is it the, there was another element there, I'm sorry, not the ticket, but between the two.
The ticketing and security building, which is on the left side, would be, I think, taller, but the top of the canopy will be close to the same height as the top of the security building.
This section here is the 9-foot wall only, which backs, the handicap ramp starts right here, and then this goes up, and then the stage and the bottle service area is here. This is the back side of the bar,
Right.
and then this is the back side of the ticket security office building.
In our drawings that we're looking at, A02 is the correct elevations of those buildings?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Donald, did you have a chance to look at maybe having the entry for those guests that are not hotel patrons, that entry that comes into the pool area to be more in composition to the street? And what I mean by that is instead of guiding them to another 50 feet down the road before a gate, if you could create more of an entry from the street to the pool area and take advantage of that and make the composition a little more relatable?
We could, but from a safety standpoint and a queuing standpoint along a major highway, I think it would be unsafe to have the people queuing up in that crowded of an area on 111 itself. By moving the ticket office further in and the gate further in, you allow more people to be queued up in a safer manner without being along a state highway.
Yeah, but people sell. So if you've been in downtown Palm Springs, there's Chiquis, there's Birba, and people stand and people want to eat there and wait an hour, you know, because people sell the stuff.
I'm sure they do, and it's a thought. We could move it over. It just, again, we were trying to keep the impact visually from 111 to a minimum, but it seems, I'm getting the sense that maybe a higher wall and moving the ticket office more towards Palm Canyon rather than away from Palm Canyon is something that certainly we would be open to doing. Again, we all thought that the opposite, that you would like the least amount of impact, not more impact.
But, okay, have you also considered having the mechanical units not on the roof of the new building, but in a landscape area on ground?
They could go on the ground behind the bar, that little kind of nook area that's there. But again, I thought that would be kind of unsightly along Palm Canyon, so we figured we'd put them and hide them up on the roof.
Yeah, but that would reduce about 3 feet.
It would reduce the height of the building by 2 feet. We could go to about a 9.5 foot building.
Okay. Okay, good. About the paint color selection, the base paint is kind of like a mustard color. Where is it?
Ken, can you put the...
I have it. It's called the root beer float. Any idea, I mean, any interest if I can pose that it could be the dolphin tail as your base color? The railing color?
It was done by the designer. If it was a recommendation from the committee, I would certainly pass it on to the designer, but I'm not opposed to any of that. I don't know what... Could you hold that up for members off? Could you hold that
Is
up
the
for one second?
designer here?
We were trying to be consistent.
Can you be on the microphone?
We were trying to be consistent with the overall building, and the overall building that's a very similar color. And therefore, we used a color that's already on the building, on the buildings themselves, on the hotels. The exterior stucco on the existing buildings is already very similar to that color, so we chose a color that was similar.
Yes. However, on your new additions, according to your renderings, you are using other new colors.
The colors that we are using are consistent with the hotel, ma'am.
The existing hotel already has those colors within it, and they're just being expanded to the exterior wall.
Right, so the dolphin tail railing color is also already there?
Yes,
Okay, all right.
yes.
So we're having difficulty because, for example, you're rendering this one. This is the backside of that wall that we're talking about.
That particular rendering, you're looking from the north to the south, so that's the back side of the cabanas. On the other side of that would be Billy Reed's.
Looking south.
Wait. I apologize. No, you're correct. That is the wall facing Puff Canyon.
Okay, so I believe you proposed the exterior wall to be root beer float, and I believe that this color is your rouge color.
The inside is different than the exterior.
I see. Okay. Okay, any other questions before we deliberate? Member Randy?
The kitchen elevation to the south, it's pretty plain and high, so can you just describe to us why you chose that simple vertical elevation on the backside of the kitchen? That's the south elevation?
Are you talking the
Adjacent.
side that's facing Billy Reed's? Or
Yes, the south, yeah.
It was in discussions with Billy Reed what they wanted. Initially, we had spoken to them about using the existing wall and building on top of it, and they did not want to do that, so we came to a compromise, and they asked for just a plain, simple wall, and that was what was done. However, in the future, something could be done with it, but currently, in conjunction with keeping Billy Reed happy and allowing us to do it, we agreed on just a simple block wall.
And that overall height is what? It's hard for us to see. that.
It's 60 inches above their pilaster. It averages about 9 feet on the interior property.
That
On
kitchen
on the
wall.
Infusion property side, it's about 9 feet above grade. On the Billy Reed side, it is 60 inches above the pilasters, which change in height from about 4 feet to about 6 feet.
And is that being viewed in their parking area, or is there some landscape there? Or tell us how that elevation is,
There's multiple trees along there that break up the length of it. There's, I believe, 14 trees along the length of our wall that you see from their parking lot. You would see the trees and then the wall behind it.
all right, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Should I turn the mic off?
Just leave
Leave it. Go ahead, turn it off.
Leave it.
No, you leave it on.
Okay, let's, any comments from the committee for our discussion? Member Gary, would you like to start?
Yeah, I understand the problem with staff with the setbacks, but seeing as how the existing buildings in the hotel are fixed and can't be moved, and now that the pool is there, and that's been approved, the flexibility is very limited for changing any of the buildings around it that are intended to be used for the soundstage. All these things relate to what's there in a way that makes it pretty hard to switch around anyplace else. I think we're left with dealing with the current setback as is. The only thing I would suggest, as I did before, is possibly something could be done with the landscape to soften that area so it's not so in your face. The landscape that's there now is in need of revitalization and updating anyway, so I would like to see a new landscape plan with pretty much all new plantings with an emphasis on taller plant material, even some small trees. They don't have to be tall enough to block out the mountain views, but they should be tall enough to diminish the impact of those tall walls.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Any other discussion points? Member Randy?
I think Gary made some good points. It's similar thoughts that I had. I think the landscape could sure help the project with, it seems like some of our concerns. I think the exposure of the activity to Palm Canyon and the limited detail of the architecture, I guess I have a little concern with that even on the kitchen side. I'm not sure, we don't have a clear idea how visible that south elevation is to Billy Reed's, and I think architecturally it's just some slabs, just some vertical slabs. It just doesn't seem like there was much thought to put in the architectural style, and maybe I'm missing something, but I'd say between landscape and maybe a little more architectural detail, maybe to define that as more as architecture, not walls. And I think Maria made a good point about maybe the AC units get down on the ground and they're screened, and then architecturally that helps that ticket area. And I guess I'm struggling with a little bit of accuracy on the site plan, so wouldn't mind seeing that, revised as well. There's no sidewalk shown here. It's really, I think it's hard for me. Maybe not. Maybe the landscape plan's more accurate than the site plan. But those are my thoughts now.
Mm-hmm. Member Robert?
I'm struggling a little with the oversimplistic architecture, whether it's the wall or the buildings. I think it's, and I've seen the block wall going up along Palm Canyon, and it's imposing, and we're not even at the full height yet. I agree. I think landscaping will help tremendously. I also am in agreement that it would be nice to enliven Palm Canyon a little bit more, and whether that means relocating the ticket booth or adding some sort of architectural detail, or even windows in the security office or something that just kind of breaks up the long mass of that wall. And the other question I had, it's as you look in the pool area, and I don't know if that's really in our purview to review, I don't really know what kind of materials, hardscape materials, or even landscape, well, there is some landscape stuff, but it doesn't really address what the hardscape is. It looks like there's a walkway that has a texture to it, but I don't really know how that compares to the adjacent, decking. So I'm just kind of curious what that's all about too.
I'm not against having the wall on the property line because it's the north side, it's the beginning of the downtown. The density part, I think, could create some real interesting composition. I think what I am not supporting is a vertical wall that goes up 9 feet and has only a wing coat of decorative treatment, and that's the only address to the people, the pedestrian, the cars. So it does lack composition, as the finding shows, that it's not a harmonious relationship to what the potential beginning of downtown could be. So I'm just looking at this, for example, pool layout, and there are the lounges and then the cabanas, but that could be all rearranged. Maybe the stage could be a little bit narrower, and then you can create some relief on Palm Canyon so that the wall doesn't have to be 60 feet long or one height, and then the remaining wall be higher and higher. So I'm in favor of the project. I think it's the beginning of, but I think it needs some work as far as how it composes to the street. And that's really what I think we're all saying. The ideas are, so if the health building requires 6 feet, then above that, can you treat it with landscape, or can you treat it with other decorative block designs? I understand the sound issue, but can you do something so that it breaks from the blunt wall and tall characteristics of the frontage of that building? So I believe that I'm in agreement with the issues that were prepared by the staff, and that this project needs a resubmittal that has consistency on the design, materials, or what is actually being used for hardscape, a comprehensive landscape plan. That's in the direction that I'm going right now. So I think I make a motion that we ask the applicant to resubmit with more information and a redesign of the frontage. Anybody?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving to actual item number 2, Racket Club Center request of an amendment to an existing sign program for a multi-tenant commercial building. Staff report, please.
Good afternoon. As introduced, this is a sign program amendment application for the Rocket Club Center at 2500 North Palm Canyon Drive. And the project site is located at the northeast corner of Palm Canyon Drive and the West Rocket Club Road. And this is a retail shopping complex which was originally developed in 1982 as a planned development district. The project site has an existing sign program which was adopted in 2008, and under the current sign program, the main signs and accessory signs are permitted. The permitted main signs include the monument signs, individual channel letter signs, and the reverse channel letter signs. And for the permitted accessory signs include window sign, blade sign, and other minor signs. The sign program amendment proposes the following. For the main signs, the monument signs, plaque signs, and individual channel letter signs are proposed. And for the secondary signs, the window signs and temporary banners are proposed. This amendment introduces a tenant classification system that categorizes all tenant spaces into major and minor spaces depending on the area. For major tenant spaces, individual channel letter sign or plaque sign will be permitted, and for minor tenants, plaque sign will be permitted. For the individual channel letter signs, it's going to be illuminated or non-illuminated. However, all plaque signs will be non-illuminated. The proposed monument sign is going to be approximately 10 feet in height and 70 square feet in the area. And the sign will include the three main components, and that is a horizontal complex identification sign, which is going to be placed on the top, and the vertical complex address panel, as well as the tenant cabinets, which is going to accommodate 8 tenant names. According to the city's general plan community design guidelines, pole signs are prohibited for commercial properties. And the staff finds that the proposed monument sign incorporates design elements that resembles the pole signs. And then also, the proposed height of 10 feet exceeds the maximum allowable height of 8 feet. And then finally, the proposed 70 square foot of sign area will exceed the maximum allowable sign area of 50 square feet. The amended sign program also proposes a plaque sign, which is going to include aluminum backing panel, which is going to project 2 inches from the wall, and the cutout letters, which is going to be attached to the aluminum backing panel. The vertical height of the aluminum backing panel is going to be 22 inches, and there is no width specified in the amended sign program. However, the maximum allowable width is going to be 16 feet. The proposed plaque sign meets the zoning requirements in terms of dimensions. However, the zoning code requires a 10-foot sign separation requirement, which is not included in this amended sign program. Considering all these findings, the staff recommend the AAC to provide comments to the applicant, or if the AAC decides to approve the project as submitted, staff recommends the committee to consider recommendations that are included in the report. For monument signs, staff recommends the elimination of design elements that resemble pole signs, and also the incorporation of a site's character-defining elements in overall design. And then also, the height and the size reduction is proposed to, is recommended to meet the zoning code requirements. And for the plaque signs, the staff recommends the establishment of the maximum allowable letter height, as well as the inclusion of a 10-foot sign separation requirement to ensure proportionate balanced placement of sign. And this concludes the staff's presentation, and the staff and applicant are here to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Noriko. Any questions for staff? Yes, Member Robert?
Hi, Noriko, thank you. It looks like from the site plan or the tenant plan, I'm not sure what it's actually called, the A building seems to have the smaller tenant spaces, and I'm just curious if you know what the sort of average width of each of those tenant spaces is. And the question is leading up to the 10-foot gap that you're asking for between the signs for different tenants.
I am not familiar with the average width of each tenant space. However, the applicant is here, and I believe he can respond to your question. And the 10-foot sign separation requirement that's what I was referring to.
Right.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if it's, what if you have 10 foot and it's only a 15-foot storefront width or something, what happens? So,
Yeah.
how do you resolve that? All right, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Member Gary.
I just didn't hear this or missed it somehow, but the letter height requirements, they're proposing 16, and is it 12 that is required now?
The letter height requirement is not applicable in this zone. The applicant is proposing a 22 inches for the height of the plaque sign, yes, but that's the plaque sign, the backing panel, which the sign letters are going to be attached to. So that's different from the letter height.
So is there an issue with the letter height? It looked like there was.
The only reason the staff is recommending a maximum letter height to be included in amended sign program is to ensure a balanced placement of the letters.
There is no maximum letter height at this point.
Right, that is correct.
Okay, and is there a way of determining that, or is it in code, or is that just a?
Not for this zone,
Okay,
yes,
so that's just whatever is deemed appropriate.
that is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, is the applicant present? Could you come up and state your name and address?
Hi, my name is MD McLean, representing Rock Club Center and my family that are the owners of the center. I guess I want to start with the tenant signs first. So in terms of the question was on the width of the storefronts. I believe the 10-foot is possible. The width, the sign program language requires it meets the code of 1 square footage per linear foot, and that's never been the problem, in terms of meeting the 10-foot standard. But if it's required, we can certainly put that still in the language, but it's never been an issue. And second is to the letter height. The max sign right now is 22 inches, and that's our wall height for each sign is 24 inches. So the plaque fits within that height, and then each tenant's name should fit within that sign. So it was reasonable to expect it was between 16 to 18 inches, but we certainly can mandate it that it can be that height. The only reason we didn't specify it has to be a certain height is that some tenants want subcopy, and in the sign program language, we allow subcopy that's vinyl lettering attached. So some could have smaller letters with vinyl subcopy underneath, but it could never be more than 20 inches height without going over the plaque itself. So that's for the tenant signs itself. And the reason why we did white also was to allow for some tenant variation in their logos. So we did white to basically match our exterior wall right now. So it floats off the wall, and so when you drive in, you're not actually going to see any attachments on the wall. It's going to look like the tenant name is floating off the wall now, and it'll create uniformity within the center itself, where right now with channel letters, everyone kind of can do their own thing a little bit, and they can go really expensive or really cheap in the way they do things. And with the aluminum plaque, it creates a lower barrier to entry, whereby everyone can meet a certain standard without feeling restrictive to put their sign up. So that's always been a big issue with the center. And then for the monument signs, to the planning's questions, the first thing was the poles. So the way we designed it, or the way we got our inspiration for the design, was looking at the 333 South Palm Canyon building, the old J.W. Robinson building, and the way they did their structure with the poles kind of on the outside and poles really attaching to the tenant name plaques. So what I wanted to do was honestly hide the poles more and make it look floating again off, like it looked like it's floating, kind of similar to the way our tenant signs would be. It seems like they have an issue with the bottom part, which we can work on. But in terms of the design, we met with the Racket Club Estates neighborhood and a couple other neighborhoods within our area to get their input and feedback, because that's what we're trying to do, is be a part of the neighborhood group, and that's why we're doing the rebranding with the name. It was formerly Northgate 111, and so with the name, we're trying to be more inclusive with everyone. And so what we're trying to do is our neighborhood is very mid-century modern, and our building is not that, unfortunately. Our building is older. It's got more Spanish to it, but we still wanted to respect where we are in the neighborhood. So we were trying to do very clean, simple, minimal lines that gets your attention without being overbearing, like, oh, that's a mid-century modern, that doesn't fit, because that's not what our building is. And then to the size, the actual tenant name part is actually only 8 feet tall. So if you don't look at the base of it, just where it's supporting, but just from the bottom of the tenant name to the top of the tenant name, that's only 8 feet tall. So it depends on how you look at it, I guess. The other part is the 20 square foot extra that we did is part of the city code to allow for tenant identification or center identification. So it allows up for 20 square feet for if you have over 5 acres, which we do. And so we wanted to just include it all in one monument, as opposed to having one monument that's 50 square feet and another monument that's 20 square feet. We wanted to put it all together and make it cohesive.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you. Okay, are there any public comments on this case? Okay, seeing none, we have some questions for you. Questions for the applicant? Member Randy?
Just one that comes up quickly is, if there is two monument signs, are the tenants going to be different or similar? And who gets the choice on the tenant space?
So the tenant names will differ. So right now, there's 8 on each side for a total of 32 for 2 monument signs. We currently have 24 total spaces at the center. So basically everyone will have at least one, and the way it's going to go about is obviously the owner will have first say on how it goes based on negotiations with the tenant, but essentially everyone within over 5,000 square footage will have the opportunity to have 2 signs. And then for the inline tenants, based on where they are and where you can see them, for the A building, it's going to be more so on the Racket Club monument side than the Palm Canyon side. And it's about making sure everyone has exposure on all 4 sides. So if you can see your name from one side, we're going to put you on the monument on the other side.
So if I understand correctly, on one monument sign, the same tenant won't be both sides? Is that-
No, no.
Okay.
No matter what, on one monument sign, the tenant will only have the possibility to be on one side of it.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Let me see. So you read through the staff recommendations?
Correct.
Okay. And it seems to me that you are in general in agreement with the staff.
Well, I'm not necessarily in agreement in what they're suggesting to lower the height of it because it doesn't fit the square footage requirement. And what we did was make sure we met the tenant signs is 8 feet tall, which is with the city code, and a total of 50 square feet, which is exactly what it is. And we just bundled it into the 20 square feet to make it 70 square feet, which was allowed for the center identification signage. So if you separate it out, it's actually 50 and 20 square feet.
Yeah, we got it. Right.
So that was like the big issue in terms of the height and the width of everything.
Okay. All right, other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Could you sign in, sir?
Okay,
Sign in, please.
comments? Member Robert? Should we go down the list of what?
Okay, let me see here. I gotta find the list.
Actually,
Of this one, okay, thank you. Okay, on the monument sign, I would agree to reduce the height and potentially the sign and not make it look quite so much like it's sticking up on some poles. My opinion about the monument sign is that to me, it looks like a lot better sign just to have the name of the center and the address rather than having 8 tenants on one side, 8 tenants on another side, 8 tenants on the other. To me, that is just going to be so confusing, and I don't think it benefits the center. The center to me, is open enough from the street that you can see all the tenant names. That's my opinion. On the storefronts. Number 2, incorporate the site characteristics defining elements into the monument sign, design so the monument sign is visually cohesive to the site. So in terms of the design of the monument sign, I also would agree that it would be better for the design to be more reflective of the center and not so much mid-century, or do something that's contemporary. The McLean sign on the fascia of their space, to me, looks great. It's simple, clean. It's not alluding to mid-century or Spanish, but it's clean and simple. And I would prefer to see something that goes along those lines. And I already addressed the reducing the height of the monument sign, as well as the size. Establish maximum letter height. And I would agree we should establish the maximum letter height and also the 10-foot spacing between distances between signs. My question was on the A building where the tenant spaces, the storefronts seem to be smaller. how much sign width you actually get if you do maintain the 10-foot. So I should have asked you that when you were still up there. And yeah, can you respond to that?
So in the A building, the average basically square footage of each of them was about 1,500 square feet with about 80 square foot of frontage, or 80 linear feet of frontage. So the way we did it, again, was to mimic the code of the city, where 1 square footage per linear foot that you have. And even with that, the sign itself will still only be centered within directly over their front door. So the width of the sign is never, the only one that could really exceed 16 feet right now is A1 to 4, because the tenant took over for all 4 spaces. But even they are not going to, maximize 16 feet, because most tenants want the sign directly over their front door. So even if they have, 200 linear feet, they're still only going to put their sign right over their front door. The only reason we did 16 feet is because that's the standard height of the aluminum plaque. So if there was ever in B1, if they actually did want to do that, it would be allowed. And then second to your channel letters, so the McLean Company channel letters, it only looks good because our wall height is double the size of every other wall height at the center. The B1 to B4, or B2 to B4, and then the entire A building and the entire D building only has a wall height of 24 inches, versus the McLean B5 and B1 has 40 inches. So channel letters look much better when there's space between them. Oops. Versus if you look right now, the only existing old is the 5-star nails that are there. And from a distance, in our opinion, it just doesn't look good. It makes it look like a 99-cent discount kind of a office center, versus a clean, linear presentation with your name easily visible. And what we're also doing that's not in the staff report is redoing the LED lights all around the shopping center. That includes the parking lights, and each of the buildings also have awnings that come out over the sign itself. So the reason we wanted to get rid of the illuminated lettering is, 1, to reduce the price for the tenants, but 2, to create a cohesive look at night. So when someone's driving through, it's not a hodgepodge of yellow, red, green colors. It's going to look uniform white LED light instead. And the secondly, to the height, one last thing, sorry.
Yeah, let me, while you're there, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
On the plaques behind the tenant signs that's being proposed, that color, is that the same color as the fascia color?
The plaque,
The actual background plaque?
it's going to be the same color as our exterior building, so
Okay.
it blends
All right.
into the building.
All right. So let me finish. So on the plaques for the individual tenants, I like that idea for the consistency and the simplicity of it, so I don't have an issue with that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
My last comment, sorry, is just to the height of the monument.
Yeah, but we were closing our,
It'd be just,
no, seriously.
okay.
Thank you. We have other applicants waiting, so thank you. Okay, all right.
I'll
Okay.
keep it simple.
Ryan?
I'm very much in line with Member Roberts' comments, and I do agree with everything. Let's see. I guess the poles don't bother me much, but the fact that it's more kind of mid-century modern versus in line with the architecture, I agree with Robert. So I guess the poles don't bother me. That could be something, kind of set in some landscape. But all the other items, the size, the height, the characteristics, I'm in agreement with staff as well as Member Roberts.
But Member Roberts also had posed the idea that instead of having a monument signage that is combined as a directory signage, that let the monument signage be a true monument, and then let the signs of each of the tenants be read on the building. What do you think about that?
I agree with that. I am sensitive to the tenants there, so as we drive by locations looking for things, or maybe not looking for things, we're driving by and we're aware of a business and we would return. So I think that opportunity is lost if the individual tenants weren't, presented. I'm not fond of the busyness of each tenant on both sides, so I guess have some mixed feelings on that.
Okay, Member Gary?
Not much to add. I pretty much agree with what's been said. I know there's a problem with the size of the sign, and I have some concerns about that just because the impact that an increased size will have, period, in a city where we're trying to keep everything pretty much in the same range. I can think of several ways to reduce the size without changing the design too much. If we do want to keep the design just by shortening the poles and the distances between tenants, you'd probably be able to get 2 feet cut out of that sign by squishing it together a little bit more. It might not give you the look that you planned to get, but if you could make it a bit more contemporary looking than mid-century modern, perhaps that would work. That's about it. I agree with the fact that you do need tenant identification signs out there. It's a major highway. People are still speeding through in that part of town, so I think the more exposure the tenants have, the better.
I'm in agreement. I think it's a corner, and I'm really appreciative that you're bringing this project forth. And as members of Palm Springs, we're, anything to get that corner going and get you just booming and coming back here, and we're having problems because you have a parking issue. That would be a great problem to resolve. So we're being sensitive to what will get more exposure to that corner. And so having said that, I do agree that if the corner was doing absolutely just fantastic, just bursting out of the corner, I would really like to just keep the signage, by the building. But to bring more eyes, we will need to have this combination. But I do agree that it should be 2 feet lower. By the time you put landscape boulders or those kinds of things, truthfully, as an architect, good luck getting that pole to work with your footings. So maybe having a CMU base will get you a more cheaper solution. But best signs are great. They'll find a structural way of standing that thing up. But I would say that it should reduce in height. And then I'm in agreement with what has been said about the business signages as well. So I think we have a motion brewing.
I would like to make one more comment. We're
Yes.
kind of all agreeing that it's not mid-century, but I just want to be careful that you guys, and it doesn't sound like you would, that it doesn't go Spanish and kind of, out of, I don't know, it's dated in a sense. I don't sense that from you guys, but so contemporary is probably a better word.
Yeah.
Simple, maybe. Doesn't have to be mid-century modern, but surely doesn't go Spanish tile hanging off the top, so.
Okay, so is there a motion? I'm looking at Member Roberts. I think for staff, should we list?
Yeah.
Yes, I think that would be helpful, because this item is going on to the Planning Commission. If you include in your motion the issues that you've mentioned in your comments already, that would be helpful.
So it's almost that we're accepting under these conditions.
Right. So we're accepting under these conditions. I move that we approve the project with these conditions. The monument sign be reduced in height and size. There is a 10-foot spacing between any tenant sign. We remove the pole sign look of the monument sign. The design of the monument sign is more contemporary and simpler. And that I left out.
And the maximum text height.
Yeah, yes. So the maximum text height is established per the sign ordinance, which is what, 16 inches? Is that?
Maybe it's just
16 inches are for downtown area, but this area does not have any specific requirements to the height of
But you,
the...
but the applicant has proposed within the
Yes, the 22
inch.
inches, yes. That's the height of the backing panel, the white panel, which is going to be projecting 2 inches from the wall, and where the sign letter will be attached to. Yes.
The applicant mentioned that kind of a backing mostly would get 16 or 18-inch high lettering. So I'm going to suggest that we have one height for all the lettering and not have it vary, whatever it is, 16 or 18 or 17.
Establishing a maximum height?
Establish a maximum height.
Yeah, it's got to establish a maximum height
All
of
right, yeah.
16 inches.
So 16?
Yeah.
Okay.
18.
Okay, 18? 17.
22, 18. Yeah.
We'll note in the motion that it was 18 inches.
Yes.
Is that
18 inches.
what everyone
18.
has agreed? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think that's it.
Yeah. I still feel strongly about all the, I understand about the
So Member
promoting the
Robert?
business.
Yeah, Member Robert, we'll accept that
I'll
motion.
second.
Okay.
Okay, but Director Flynn will make sure that your commentary will be passed along. Okay. All right, so anybody will second that
second
motion? Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. We're going to take about a 5-minute break.
plans that he's approved, that isn't what he's building. Thank you. And then when I told you about the legal thing, is absolutely mind-blowing. And the law firm that did that won't talk. So I've been off with the owners saying, what do we do? You know, we've been operating one way, but then the state says you don't, you're suspended. Yeah, I'm just, you know, I guess what I'm really saying, all about ways, I appreciate your world. This is all new to me. You probably day in, day out.
Well, there are certain aspects that go with the corporations and all of that outside of my realm.
Okay, so it's 4:29, and we're going to reassume with new business, item number 3, Best Sign, Inc., on behalf of DTPS B-2 LLC to establish a sign program that defines signage criteria for tenants within the two-story building located in Block B of the downtown Palm Springs specific plan. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Chairwoman Song and committee members. So the item before you, as you stated, is a sign program for the Block B building, which is a two-story building that was approved by City Council in 2014. As a way of background, the property is within the downtown Palm Springs specific plan. As I said, it was approved in October of 2014. Since then, there has been one sign program within this specific plan that was approved, and that is the sign program for the Block A building, which was approved back in April 13th, on April 13th of 2016. So sign programs generally throughout the city are required for multi-tenant buildings, as you know. Programs are required to complement the building architecture and design. So that's just some background on sign programs. And sign programs can act can request variances from the ordinance. Those deviations have to be approved by Planning Commission, and it requires that the Planning Commission make 3 findings. So the sign program that you have before you here includes 2 components. It includes a sign manual, which is the text booklet you have, as well as the master sign plan, which is the 11 by 17 booklet you have that shows examples of the elevations with the proposed signage around the buildings, or around the building. The signage that is being requested is only for the ground floor tenants. The second floor does not have signage proposed under the sign program. And there are 2 types of main signs that are being requested. There's the primary signage and the secondary signage. The secondary signage includes entry window door signs and blade signs. And also the sign program does provide criteria for temporary signs and prohibited signs. So to focus on the main signs for the building, the primary signs that are proposed include individual letters, cabinet type, as well as with push-through letters and other types as approved by the city. And so those are primarily going to be located above the storefront overhangs. And then there's also the secondary signage that is being requested for main signs, and that's going to be the blade signs and the window signage. So this slide here kind of just shows you where the main signs are going to be located on the east elevation facing Palm Canyon. So this is where signs would be, the primary sign located above the storefront would be on the building, and this is what you have in your packet, so this is consistent with that. This is probably difficult to read, but it's also a table that was from your, that's from your staff memo. It is just essentially a summary of what is being requested, what is allowed under the sign ordinance for the downtown, and then where it does not conform to the sign ordinance. So essentially, they're requesting up to 2 main signs per elevation, whereas the city only allows 1 main sign per street front elevation. They're requesting a sign area of 1.5 square feet per lineal business frontage, the city limits sign area to 1 square foot per lineal frontage. The overall length is not to exceed 3/4 of the tenant's storefront, whereas the city sign ordinance limits the length to 2/3 of the storefront for downtown. And finally, the letter height isn't defined in the sign program, whereas in our sign ordinance downtown, letter heights are limited to 14 inches, with the first letter capital allowed as high as 16 inches. So generally, they are requesting deviations for the primary sign above the storefront. Moving on to the secondary main signs for the sign program. In this slide, you see some of the blade signs that are being proposed on the east elevation fronting Palm Canyon. This is, of course, below the overhangs. It appears as though some are hanging underneath the overhang as well as appended to the side of the building. So this just kind of gives you an idea of those signs. The other secondary main sign that they are proposing is the window signage. We don't have an exhibit of that, but it is fairly minimal in terms of its size. They're requesting 1 square foot of sign area every alternating window. But that, I can go over that here, just how that conforms to the ordinance here in the next slide. So this type of signage, again, the secondary main sign, there are 2 types being requested, the blade sign and the window sign. In our sign ordinance downtown, we limit this accessory main sign to either a blade sign or a window sign. You do not get both in our downtown ordinance. So they're requesting to allow both of the sign types for each tenant. And again, there are various criteria that are regulated in terms of the blade signs, in terms of 9 square feet maximum, the materials, the point of the sign above the sidewalk, minimum being 7 feet. This criteria is not included in the sign program, so it's really left open and undefined. It just limits it to no more than 12 square feet. And as far as the window signs, as I mentioned, it limits it to 1 square foot for every alternating window in the sign program. Our sign ordinance limits window signs to 6 square feet on either side of the customer entry. So there's more square footage allowed just by your entry. However, the sign program is defining it as 1 square foot every alternating window. So there are, again, some deviations being requested there. So to kind of summarize it again, they are requesting duplicate signs on the same elevation. They're requesting various types of signs in 3 locations on the elevation for each tenant, and they're also requesting main signs exceed the letter height area and width maximums versus what's allowed in our downtown ordinance. So those are the deviations being requested. When staff reviewed the program against or evaluated these deviations, we looked at the architectural review guidelines, section 9404 of our zoning code, and the 2 criteria that we felt the program did not live up to were criteria 2 and criteria 5. And essentially that in criteria 2, where you are looking at harmonious relationship with existing and proposed adjoining developments, staff believe that some of the deviations being requested were potentially out of harmony with the area in terms of its size, potential letter height, things like that in our downtown. So we felt that the proposed sign program as it is now, it's being unrestricted in letter heights could be out of harmony with the adjoining development. So that's what we looked at in our staff report and had some issues with there. Moving on to criterion 5, harmony of materials, colors, and composition of those elements, and substructures when visible simultaneously. So again, the deviations being requested when we looked at how it fit with the harmony of the existing developments and the surrounding, we felt there were some challenges there. Staff also, when reviewing the program, compared it with the Block A sign program that was approved last year, and that also is in your report as an attachment too. But generally speaking, when we looked at what was being requested and what was being proposed, there is some changes. There was some more restrictive requirements that the Planning Commission imposed when they approved the Block A sign program. And so when we evaluated this program against those, again, the architectural review guidelines and the Block A sign program, we came up with the recommendation, which you have at the beginning of your staff report and as well at the end. So one of our recommendations was to limit the main signs above the canopy to 1 per street front elevation. Essentially, what that would do, when you're looking at the sign plan in your packet, on sheet 8, where you see free people elevation signage, one of those signs would be removed. Now, our second recommendation was to restrict letter heights to no more than 16 inches, or if they exceed 16 inches, that the total square footage comply with the downtown in terms of 1 square foot of sign area per lineal foot of frontage. But in no instance we recommend no higher than 36 inches, and that would be consistent with what was approved on Block A with the West Elm sign. So that would impact some of the signage here, particularly probably the Free People signage, as those letter heights are currently 36 inches. However, the sign area is 56 square feet, and then so the overall size of that sign would have to be probably reduced in order to comply with a 1-to-1 square foot area that would be permitted by the downtown ordinance. So the third recommendation is to provide a decorative blade sign bracket and frame to establish a unified theme for the building and enhance the pedestrian experience. That is something that we felt would be a way to unify the signage, particularly around this building, as when you're looking at all 4 sides of the building, there is consistency amongst the tenant spaces. You would have a bracket and a frame, hopefully, that would create some uniformity there. So that was another recommendation we felt strongly about. And then the last 2 are really related to separate review of other items, just to ensure that those items be addressed at a later time, namely the Block B1 building, which would be the Virgin Hotel, and then the overall wayfinding and directional signage for downtown. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. The applicant is also here, and I'm sure they'd like to weigh in and make a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, any questions for staff? Member Robert.
Thank you, David. A couple quick questions. On the building elevations, do you know what the heights of the canopy over the entry doors are, as well as the height of the panels above the canopies? And the canopies look like they're at 2 different heights. There's no dimensions there, so I'm just curious.
The lower, I can tell you that the top of the lower higher, with the roof, the highest roof plane that is at the top of the building is I believe 36 feet in height.
13 feet?
36 to the top of the very top of the building. So I'm not entirely certain how tall that lower portion, that lower eave is. I would imagine it's probably 12 feet or so, maybe 13.
Okay. And then on each of the panels above the canopies at the storefronts, there's some vertical lines. I'm assuming there's some sort of material for that. Do you know what that is? I mean, you know what that whole fascia material is?
I'm not entirely certain on that.
Okay.
I have to go back to the elevation.
And then the last, since I'm batting 1,000, the last question is, on the Keel sign, that one has got a black background, which is different than all the other signs. What are they proposing there?
So one thing that would change for each of these tenants is that area kind of framed. Within, each tenant can change that or make it tailored for their specific design. So we do anticipate that area behind the sign would change per tenant. So that would come back before you for review at a later time. But for that specific tenant, I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know exactly what it's going to be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions for staff? If not, is the applicant present? Okay. come on over.
Good afternoon, AAC. My name is Jim Cross. I represent Best Signs in Palm Springs. First of all, David makes us sound kind of greedy, and we're not. I think there's only one location where there was an elevation that asked for more than one sign, and that was on the side street for free people. So we asked for it because that's what the client wanted. And that kind of brings me to this point, and that is, in this particular situation, because there are already established tenants, many times when I come to you guys, I bring you a sign program that says tenant name here, tenant name here, tenant name here. In this instance, because not only in Block B but Block C both, there were tenants already lined up. And instead of me saying, you know, I think you should have this, each of them, they're all, but not the ones that are, most of them are on there are all major brands. And they have spent considerable amount of money on branding and imaging. They're architects and all of that good stuff. So basically what I told my client was, see what your people want, because that's what we need to be asking for. Otherwise, I'm kind of going in blindly. So in each of these situations, the elevation that you have before you is what Keel's or Francesca's, or when we get into the other blocks, they all said, this is what we want. So, you know, so once again, I'm kind of doing the busy work here. I like to play designer. Whether I am a designer or not, I don't know, but I like to play designer. And I think that the sizing that we're asking for is not out of the question. What happened with Block A was we set a precedent. We have a size of letter in West Elm that didn't previously exist, but this commission, as well as the Planning Commission, everybody more or less agreed that what we're seeing downtown is different than what we've ever seen before. So for us to apply old standards, the village standards don't really, you know, those kind of went out the window when we broke ground, when we tore down the Desert Fashion Plaza. That doesn't mean we just start throwing up anything that we want to start asking for, you know, large signs just for the sake of asking for large signs. But what we've been trying to do, and what I've been mindful to do, is not bring you anything that I didn't think was out of the question. So everything that you have before you has been approved by my aesthetic mind. Whether that it meets your aesthetic mind is really going to be today's question. You know, the square footage, the issue of square footage, the thing is that the city of Palm Springs, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, is that square footage is determined by drawing a box. You get a box, a simple four-sided box. And that is an issue so many times, particularly when you get into a sign like Free People, where the letter is very free. You have large swinging letters. And when you put that inside of a four-sided box and say you're allowed at X amount of square feet, all of a sudden the E in Free People is a 5-inch letter. And so what we actually had prepared and I had brought to David, then I took it back, was to propose an 8-sided box, which is what most cities do. City of Palm Springs is very unique in simplifying the fact that you determine square footage by a 4-sided box. And so, but we thought, well, wait a minute, we got 1.5 to 1 approved in Block A. Let's disregard the asking for an 8-sided box. We'll stick with the 4-sided box. That way we're not, you know, asking for too much, and just ask for 1.5 inches equals a foot, which basically makes up for, you know, being restricted by that 4-sided box with a lot of these tenants' logos. So, like, I'm sure that you have a lot of questions, and I know that we're going to look at Block B first, then we're going to look at Block C. I presented Block B and C both at the same time because they're both relevant, and I wanted to talk about Block B and C when we were talking about Block A, but you guys told me to sit down, so I did. So if you just start asking away, and once again, I think that you know, what you have before you is basically what I was asked to submit. If somebody asked me to submit something that I think is ridiculous, oversized, or aesthetically wrong, then I bring it to their attention. I brought up to the ownership the fact that there's no way we're going to get two signs on the same elevation. I know that. So the fact that David brings it up, it doesn't surprise me. You're going to tell me we can't have it? Okay, we can't have it. I already knew that. But hopefully you don't tell me that we have to stick to a, one by one, or we have to stay within the traditional village guidelines, because we don't have a village anymore. We have a very interesting project. And at the end of the day, I think it's going to be amazing. I really do. I think it's going to be, anyways, I'll just end it there. I'll either take a seat or you guys ask me questions.
Jim, John, are you here for this project commentary? No? Okay, so we'll proceed to the questions. Okay. Okay, so questions for the applicant. Could I ask my committee members on this, could we approach one subject at a time so that we're not, trying to discuss everything together? So, for example, could we ask the main signage, okay, that's actually, for example, on page 5, it has a good rendition, and I believe this is fronting Palm Canyon. Jim, is that correct?
I'm getting there. Yes. Page 5 is the east elevation, so yes, that would be Palm Canyon.
Okay. I'd like to set the tone by saying that Jim has demonstrated the possible name or the actual names and the square footages in comparison to what each square footage actually is, and how does it compare to the square footage when it's supposed to be 75% of the storefront. Have I said anything incorrect?
No.
No, okay. All right, so questions related to the signage on the storefront. Member Gary,
I don't know if this relates, I just had a question about the white signs.
the blaze signs? Okay, let's wait until question. Member Robert?
So maybe you can answer me what the material that the signs, the channel letters go on?
I wish I could, but no, I don't. I'm sorry to say. All I can say is that when the 3D model was given to me originally, it was glass, and then it changed. And what it's been changed to, I honestly don't know. I just know that I told them that it needed to be something that could structurally support the sign, that we could conceal the electrical components, and also they needed to be mindful of the fact that tenants come and go. So gave them those variables. I spoke with the architect, Chris Pardo, on that, and he assured me that they would check all of those off, but what that material ended up being, I honestly don't know.
Okay. And then can you talk a little bit about the Keel's background?
Well, I think just like what David said is that when the tenants present their brand, what they want, Keel's was the only one that sent in their elevation with that black background. So that's what we did. There was one other tenant that I noticed was a bistro, I believe it was, that also had a darkened background. Page 7 or
Oh, yeah.
Le Rue, I don't know how to pronounce that, but the bistro.
On the west elevation, yes, okay. All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, Member Randy.
Just for clarity, I think, Marie, what you're saying is, Jim, you've indicated your total square footage based on the 1 foot to, the current downtown, or to the 1.5?
1.5 to 1 based upon the 4 box.
So what you have, say, on sheet 5 for Free People, it says 56.5 total square feet, and it's allowed the 57 of the, you say allowed, is that the 1.5 or is that the 1?
That'd be 1.5.
Yeah, okay, just clarifying it, thank you.
Okay, so Francesca's is coming in, and that's the signage,
That's what I've been
as
told.
you understand?
Yes.
Right, okay. So for Francesca and Free People, is the design finish that's proposed by Chris Pardo, that's what's going to remain?
Are you talking about the elevation background? Or,
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever that is, we're not sure what that is, but
Right.
yes, there is to be a solid background as opposed to
Right,
a
but the-
transparent background.
But the tenant corporation has not said to you, we're going to give you a spec for a different background. This is
Yeah.
their signage.
Yes, unfortunately, I have no knowledge on what the building material or palette is whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that question is more referring to, for example, Free People. I understand your explanation about they're very cursive, free, thin letters, that if you actually took a square footage of the actual calligraphy, you won't get to what the four-sided square footage that is required by the Planning Commission will be in conflict with.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Okay, then, could
Just
we move-
one minor clarification is, on Block A, what was approved was not 75%, it was 72%.
Right.
For what that's worth.
You're right about that. Okay, so on sheet 6, for example, we're looking at a possible future tenant name and also Keels, but if the tenant has frontage on Palm Canyon as well as the side, oh no, that one is only one name per facade, so we're okay with that. And then sheet 7, for example, if the tenant, that says tenant name on number 19 and tenant number 16 end up being the same tenant, they would only end up having one signage.
Correct.
Right now, per what is being stated by staff, or recommended by staff. And then we already talked about page 8, that the Free People will have one signage because that's the frontage on that street. Okay, now can we move to the blade signage questions? Remember, Gary, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to see if you could discuss the issue that, of the lack of ornamentation on the blade signs.
David, can you clarify blade signs?
One of our recommendations was to prepare a bracket and frame that would be uniform around the building versus just the standard 2 poles, drop down and do whatever you want. That was our recommendation. So
I think it's a great recommendation. It would be my recommendation as well. It would mean that the ownership would need to purchase the blade or not necessarily the blade, but perhaps just the bracket. I think that it makes perfect sense. Tenants come and go. Like I said, the bracket always stays, and then when a new tenant comes, I think that should be the norm, except for perhaps in a circumstance where there's not room for a bracket, that maybe an alternative. And I'd have to look at the elevations again myself to see if that condition exists. Perhaps the only place to put a blade sign is to hang it from the eave. I'm not sure, like I said, if that condition exists, but if it does, then perhaps we could broach that subject.
John, in your opinion, you have done so many of these signages, okay?
Do I look more like a John or a Jim?
I'm sorry, Jim.
No, I'm just kidding. My son's
looking at John.
my son's name is John. I get
Jim.
it a lot, so I just think I must look like John.
Okay, so the 3x4, the canopies are about 12 to 14 feet.
Okay.
Okay, the 3x4, doesn't it seem a little large to you for pedestrian, walking in that? It's not for vehicles.
Yeah, I think that we need to, let's say that an appropriate placed sign, the bottom of the sign, it should probably be, I'd say, about 8 feet. If it's 7 feet, I think it's too low. I mean,
Yeah.
that is, so let's say it's 8 feet, and on some of those, perhaps we have, I think if that sign was maybe 24 inches, 30 inches at the most by 30, 36, I don't have a problem making those smaller. And once again, on some of these, I'm the messenger.
Yeah, no, we
So,
get,
Yeah, and so I can relay what you guys are suggesting, and you're asking my opinion is, yes, I don't think they need to be 3 foot by 4 foot.
Okay.
Now, whether or not the client will watch the tape and watch me say that or not, I doubt, but.
Okay, other questions on the blade signage? So we talked about material, we talked about size. David, can you clarify that there will be one at the door of the retail space or near the door?
I'm sorry, one active door?
The blade location,
Uh-huh.
would it be,
Yeah, our recommendation, or as we see it, it would be adjacent to the glazing somewhere. So, and that's going to be where their entries are unless you know otherwise. But my understanding is all of the entries are going to be where there's the glazing and their main sign above. So we would recommend that it would be by the glazing. There are some where you see on the elevation, for instance, on sheet 5, where that isn't the
side view.
case. So, again, maybe that's something that we can take another look at, but there were, on sheet 5, you do see more blade signs than tenants. So there are 6 blade signs and 5 tenants. So if there are only 5 tenants, then one of those would go away. And then we would have to take another look at how that's placed on the building.
To that point, it's possible that on number 8, which is tenant name, that space could be divided into 2 spaces. And so if that's the case, then now that linear frontage is now halved, and their sign becomes much less, and there would be a 6th blade sign. We don't, because we have, obviously we have no control over what's going on down there and who's going and who's taking what space. But I do want to say that I do think that the blade signs are important from a visibility standpoint for pedestrians because the signs are up high enough, and there is that little eave hanging over that if I'm walking down the street, with the exception of seeing their vinyl sign or seeing their product, then visually walking down the street, I won't be able to see who's there. So I'm gonna make sure that the client understand that it is significant that I think that blade bracket should be architecturally, and it should be aesthetically, and it should be something not grand, but certainly consistent and something that is that has a little bit of presence and not just an arm sticking out with a couple of eye bolts.
yes, Member Randy?
Just while we're talking on blade signs, 13 and 20 on sheet 9, are those really referring to some pedestrian access to upper level or lobby, or is that's not really related to retail, is it?
You said 13 and 9?
20
Oh, 13 and
on sheet 9. Because they're kind of directed to some lobbies and...
So page 7.
Yeah, actually, I think that there is, because there's space up there, I mean, you guys probably know what's up there better than I do, hopefully. Offices?
Residential.
Residential?
That shows it as a blade.
There's people that live in their offices.
So you're saying it might go to an upstairs tenant?
Yes, yeah, not necessarily a tenant, but I think to just identify, if you're looking for the dentist or the attorney or whatever's up there, that there's a sign that says offices upstairs. I'm not
That's what I
quite
was
sure
wondering,
what
if
that
it
is.
wasn't really
Yeah.
a tenant sign, it's more of a...
Yeah, no one's going to get, if there's tenants up there, they're not going to have visibility from down below, but we need to let somebody know that there's an elevator or stairs.
It's just kind of
or-
a wayfinding more.
Exactly,
than-
yes.
All right, thanks.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? Yes, Member Gary?
Just to clarify, and this isn't about blade signs, is it 3 people? I'm seeing 4 signs.
Well-
I'm seeing 1 on the east elevation, 1 on the west elevation,
Page 4.
and 2 on the south elevation. Is that correct?
Yep, per city code is David can correct me if I'm wrong, but a tenant is allowed to have 1 sign per elevation.
So the only one possibly in violation is the south elevation.
Correct.
Yes, and we've already took care of that.
Oh, they did?
Yes, yes. Yeah, we're only gonna have 1 on the, yes. Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Are we to define which location on the south, or probably doesn't matter? We say they were right or left, or?
Right, because they're both about 32 feet.
I would think it'd be the one that's closest to Palm
Good
Canyon.
thing, but we have no need to,
We could define that.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jem. We'll see you a little later. Okay, let's discuss. Yes, Member Robert?
Just a couple of comments. On the blade signs, I think my sort of sense of, as you experience walking under them, is that they should be the bottom should be established at a consistent height, as opposed to being 2 feet down from the canopy height, because there is a different height in the canopies as you go. And because of this building, which is very different than Building C, this building has a consistency in the architecture. I almost, and what's being proposed are all illuminated channel letters. I almost would prefer that, as an example with the Keels or the other tenant that has the darker background, that we leave whatever architectural background is part of the building as that, and that the tenants don't get to change the color or the background. I think there's a certain consistency that is nice with this, and that if you start to get a yellow or a red or a black or whatever over their entry, I think it's just going to detract from the architecture of the building. So.
Okay, Member Randy?
I'm in agreement with Member Robert on that as well. Both on the height. I think there should be a standard on the blade bracket, on the height and its style, whatever that is. And then I think I'm in agreement with the blade size dimension is smaller than what's proposed on one of these sheets.
So 24 by 36.
And I'm not sure about the sign size going beyond the standard at this point, and have no opinion right now.
Okay. Member Gary?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said before, 100%. But I am in conflict about what Randy just mentioned, because I can see where a certain brand with, like 3 people, with a small cursive script would require a larger amount of square footage to be visible, but if we were to allow a larger amount of square footage and another tenant came in that used big blocky letters, that's certainly something we probably wouldn't want to have. So what do we do? I'm kind of stuck there.
Yeah, I'm in the same position. I think we appreciate seeing free people because it's an average of 14 inches, except where the P and then F are, or the L. So even if you took the average of those, I think it will come out to be about, no higher than 22 inches. So, and because it's such a thin And I feel the same way about Francesca, because it's only the F that's really out of scale compared to the others. But we are specifically, I could specifically say, yeah, we can do that on those. But the tenant name on 4 and 8, even on Keels, I can say the same thing. But on 4 and 8, is the tenant going to come back and fill out every square footage? So I'm saying that, yeah, could we see the signage once the other tenants come in and allow for these to be accepted? Yes, Member Gary?
I'm not sure, but there could be a problem there if we're establishing, say, for one tenant, certain size of sign, and then that tenant goes away and another one comes in. Does that size limitation stay with the address, or does it change according to the tenant? I guess we just review the new sign. This is what we have to do. So if we're approving, say, 3 people, we're just approving that particular sign for that particular tenant to be that particular size. I have to make that clear.
Right.
Let me just offer this comment. Because this sign program is so specific to the tenants, most likely the applicant will need to come back with some type of modification before the AAC and Planning Commission if they do anything different than what they've got
Thank
here.
you.
Now, with the generic tenants, again, if the signage falls within that 20 inches by 30 feet max, then it's fine. But I would have a hard time seeing some other type of tenant being able to go into Keels or Free People with those exact dimensions, because it's very specific to the tenant.
Correct. Thank you. So I think what we have right now on the table is that the uniformity, the actual design of the, may I say, frame or system of the blade, of the uniformity of the height and the system that is going to be, or the design that is matching with the architectural style, and that is established at the door. And if there are multiple tenants in each bay, then it would be per each door. I think we're clear on that and reducing the signage. I think right now we're talking about my overview about blade number 2, number 6, and number 10 have ins and outs on the actual logo that doesn't seem to be problematic.
You're wondering if it would be problematic, you're
No,
saying?
my opinion is that it's not problematic.
Problematic.
Yeah. So at this point, we can make a motion, and there can be adjustments to the motion.
Before we make a motion, can I ask
Yes.
a question? Do you think we should establish the blade sign size at this point? Or just, I mean, I think we need to sort of say it's got to be 24 by 30 or, you know, something.
Oh, yeah, I was proposing 24 by 36.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
I didn't hear that, thank you.
By 36.
24 high, 36
Wide.
wide.
Okay.
Okay, so should I draft a motion? Okay, I'm sorry, not draft a motion, but put the motion in. Okay, so the recommendation is to approve the project with the tenant signage for Free People, Francesca, Keels, and, I'm sorry, there are restaurants, the Luder Bistro, and is there one more bistro? That's it? Okay. As the design has been proposed, that the background should be consistent. And third, if the future tenants fall outside of the guides that are being proposed, that they need to come back to AAC and Planning Commission. When it comes to the blade signage, that there should be a design of the blade frame and mounting brought to the staff with a size that is 36 inches wide and 24 inches high, that the bottom is consistent and is established evenly on all tenants. And that should really be 9 to 10 feet high. Yeah. Have I missed anything? And the restriction on, back on the tenant signage, that it should be one per street facade. Okay, anybody second that? Thank you, Gary. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. Okay, we're moving to new business, number 4, Best Sign, Inc., on behalf of DTPS C-15 LLC to establish a sign program that defines signage criteria for tenants within the 1- and 2-story building located on Block C. Staff report.
In the interest of time, Mr. Newell, if you could maybe cut this down where there are similarities between the two programs for the two blocks. Maybe let's just focus on perhaps what is different.
Sure.
If that might be okay with the AAC.
Actually, even more direct is if we can go to the exterior elevations on each of the tenants.
Sure.
And that might even cut out more time in this discussion.
Probably just easier to show you the program. Which is in my pocket. Sure, while this is loading. Basically, some of the main differences that you'll have, or that you have between the Block B sign program and the Block C sign program is obviously the storefront facades are going to be different. You have different storefront elevations for each of the tenants, which is very specific in terms of the materials and the detail, and whereas in Block B, you had a uniform design around the entire building, similar to Block A in terms of its overall design. So with Block C, you're looking at individual storefronts, each with their own somewhat tailored design, not necessarily specific to their corporate brand, but more architecturally tailored differently than what you have in the other blocks. So when you're looking at going to your master sign plan, again, the sign manual itself is the same as what you had in Block B. So if you looked at Block B, it's going to be the same in terms of its general description of signage criteria. When you're looking at Block C, you have your different elevations on sheet 4 that show the different sides of the building. You have the Palm Canyon frontage, on the top left of sheet 4, the north elevation, which is facing Museum Way on the right side, and then the west elevation, which is facing the pedestrian corridor, left side of the bottom, sheet 4, and the south elevation facing Talkwitz on the bottom right. And then when you pull to return to sheet 5, you have some of the specifics that are being requested here. You have the Starbucks, a Mac, an H&M, 2 blank tenant spaces, potentially could be 1, but at this time it's showing us 2, and then the Tommy Bahama shown near the corner there of Museum Way and Palm Canyon. So what you see in terms of the specifics here, you're looking at the Starbucks at 20 inches high in terms of its letter, as well as the Mac at 20 inches. The other criteria, the other 2 blank tenant spaces would be 20 inches and 27 inches for Tommy Bahama, and then the H&M would be of as high as 60 inches. So you're looking at a 5-foot high sign there on the upper portion of the wall. Sheet 6 shows the Tommy Bahama and then the potential locations for future tenants on the west side of the block, Block C, and a blade sign that would hang below the overhang on that facade. Sheet 7 also again shows the back of the building facing the pedestrian paseo. One area where you may have a duplication of signage on this elevation would be along the northerly portion where you're showing as 2 tenants. We believe that that would actually probably be 1 tenant in most cases, so there potentially is duplication in there. Next to that space is where the entry is to the second floor residential. So there's a sign there that identifies the entry, the pedestrian entry as the Lofts at 111, which is the address of that building on North Palm Canyon. Next to that is the trash enclosure and the public restrooms. So there would be a sign identifying the restroom on that elevation. And then the last 2 signs that you see on there on sheet 7 are the El Corso and H&M, which shows a height of 5 foot 10 inches overall. So that would be essentially the largest letter height for the program, would be this H&M tenant at 5 foot 10. Again, we reiterate the fact that the other signage in the museum or the downtown specific plan has not exceeded 36 inches, but this is, again, a very tall sign at 5 foot 10 inches. Okay, and lastly, sheet 8 shows you the south facade, or as it fronts Talkwitz, with Starbucks wrapping around the corner, the H&M also extending next to that around the Starbucks tenant space, and then to the left of that you have the El Corso, which is set back from Talkwitz Canyon Way. As I mentioned previously, we do have the same recommendation, staff recommendation, as we had for Block B, limiting main signs above the canopy to 1 per street front or per elevation, restricting letter heights, providing a decorative blade sign bracket and frame to establish a unified theme. And so those are essentially the recommendations that we would have.
Thank you, David. Do we have any questions for staff? Okay, Member Robert.
David, on the H&M elevation along Palm Canyon, they've got their channel letters, they've got a hanging sign, and they have a blade sign. So the hanging sign, what is that exactly? And is that would that constitute a second primary sign, or is that a secondary sign? So it would be number 5 is what I'm asking, which is over the doors.
So that would essentially be a second blade sign.
It would be a second blade sign.
Correct, because they're showing 2 blade signs. So that is a duplication again.
Okay. And then the other location where there would be potentially 2 primary signs would be on the Tommy Bahama elevation. That would be the north elevation, is that right?
Correct. There are 3 signs, main signs for the Tommy Bahama, the 2 facing each street and then the 1 facing the corner.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, Jim, come on up. Okay. We're just gonna straight into questions.
Okay.
Unless you have some statement.
I heard time was an issue from Lynn. I suggest we just approve it and go home.
I don't think it's Christmas yet.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, the only thing that I would like to state is, okay, I'm asking for the largest letter downtown has ever seen. I realize that. But downtown has, once again, never seen the H&M building. You know, we do have, in other parts of the city, you know, whether it be Home Depot or Bed Bath & Beyond, there are signs that have very large letters within the city. So it's just a question of what is appropriate. And as I've stood up here and stated many times, I have issue with stating maximum heights because it puts designers within a box. And you guys are architects and designers, and nobody likes design within inside of a box. It's just a really, you know, we have two extremes. We have H&M, which is literally 2 letters. It's a very unique brand. And then you have Mac, which is 3. And, you know, Mac's great. They got a 20-inch letter, but their sign's 15 feet long. And, you know, H&M is asking for a letter that's almost 5 foot, but it's only 7.5 foot wide. So they're very unique brands. And, you know, and what you're seeing before you is what was sent to us by the H&M people. And I know everybody's heard of them. They're a powerhouse, whether you like them or not. They're here, and I'm sure everybody wants them to be successful. You know, I once again, in my mind's eye, I look at that and I think that for that elevation within the architecture, it looks to be sized appropriately. It looks like it's the proper ratio. If I was made to move it to make it smaller, I would, and it was in the same place, it would look too small. We'd have to move it down, so it didn't look like it was too small. Now, you know, so. If you guys have, you know, questions for me, we're asking for, you know, we have, you know, like I say, we have some of the biggest brands, Tommy Bahamas, Mac, Starbucks, and H&M. And every single one of them have architects that sent their elevations say, this is what we want. And I promise you, I don't know how I can promise this, but I'm pretty sure that none of them are coming from a standpoint of, well, let's win with the biggest sign we can have. Because that's not the way that most of these brands work. They go with what makes their image and their brand work. And so, you know, I'll essentially be taking your feedback back to them, and it's either, you know, 2 thumbs up, 2 thumbs down, 1 thumb up, 1 thumb down, whatever that goes, and then we'll go move from there.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Okay, so questions for Jim? Could I just off the bat say, could we just transfer the same commentaries on the blade sign so we get that off the, okay, great. So we're really talking about the tenant signage now, okay.
So
Member
that-
Randy?
Madam Chair, just to specify, that would completely change number 6 on
Number
sheet 5.
I'm in complete agreement, yeah. Yeah, I think we're, okay.
Just to clarify.
All right, so,
No, I just had another question, maybe clarification from Jim on the hanging sign on H&M and the blade sign. Can you give us a little background on that? Why the hanging sign and the blade signs there?
Yeah, I sent them an email, said, what do you guys want? And they sent that back to me. That's it. I think that, you know, once again, they look for uniformity from one store to the next. You know, they are in primarily a lot of malls. I know this is not a mall. And so, you know, I think that, once again, hopefully they don't watch the tapes, but I think that the large blade sign is overkill. I don't think it's really needs to be that big, probably half that size. 2x3 might look a little diminished there. But since we're talking about it being pedestrian friendly, I'm sure that they could probably get along with that just fine. I think that the smaller sign at the entry is what you see at most every H&M, and that is just looking for brand image consistency from one store to the next. I believe that the blade sign is more about catching pedestrians. The one above the entry is about consistent from one store to the next.
And the hanging sign looks graphically on the elevation, it's parallel to the elevation. It's not perpendicular.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, Member Roberts? Robert, sorry.
No.
Was that the question? Okay. Member Gary? Okay. So, Jim, the signage that we were just talking about, the 6 feet by 6 foot 6 inches, is the non-illuminated blade signage for H&M.
Yes, ma'am?
Okay, so, I mean, that's 6, okay, so, from the rendering, it looks like a person, you know, average height 5'6", and then it's just barely up above the person. And it has the same, I feel like I'm reiterating what you were saying, is that it's really to catch the pedestrians as they're coming north-south on that sidewalk. In addition to that, I wanted to ask you about the brick building where they have tenant signage on each of the bays. For the second floor, they're not proposing anything, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, if there's no other questions to Jim, let's close it and, oh, yeah. Member Roberts.
Yeah, talking about, I'm sorry, on the north elevation, the brick building that Chair Maria was talking about, numbers 13, 14, and 16, they're wall-mounted blade signs, but are they being mounted onto the storefront system, the window mullions, or what? How are they mounted? So that's page 6.
I would prefer to mount them into the brick as opposed into window mullion. And since we're talking about, I'm going to convince the ownership that they need to purchase those blade brackets, so that'd be kind of a one and done. It's installed and it stays.
Okay. Because it's...
Typically don't like to put things, are we showing it in the window mullion?
Yeah, well, it's showing it right in the center over the doors, and it looks like it's kind of hanging into the door. Again, if you look at sheet 6, the north elevation, building elevation, numbers 13, 14, and 16.
I'd have to revisit that. I'd have to look at the SketchUp model to see what that looks like in 3D and virtual world. Because a lot of these things, they really change when you see them three-dimensionally as opposed to these flattened elevations, to see where those could go. Because I don't like them being right below the tenant sign.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So, yeah,
Thank you.
they may not have space for a blade sign. There may not physically be an area for a blade sign to mount.
I have similar questions back on the hanging sign on how that gets detailed. Is it hanging from that horizontal architectural element mid-height, or is it hanging off the mullion, or do you even know at this point?
Are we talking about H&M?
Yeah, number 5.
That has to be resolved,
Yeah.
because right now, I don't know if anybody picked up on it or not, but the ampersand is floating magically. So it really, the way that they sent it to us, it
Yeah.
doesn't work. What we hope to do is say, yes, we understand they can have the sign, they can have it at that size, and then we would come back to the planning department and show how we're going to make that work.
Understood.
Okay, thank you, Jim. All right. A couple of items that have come up that I want to put on the table for my colleagues to discuss is that H&M numbers, identify number 6. I think I speak for all of us, but it seems oversized. Dave has also mentioned that for the tenant space on the brick building for the west elevation, that if it is the same tenant, that they would have only one sign on that building facade. And the third item is that even though we agreed on the blade signage, so 13, 14, and 16, we're going to pass along the comments for reducing it to 24 by 36. We still would like the applicant to come to staff and show them exactly what design and what frame and how it's being attached. It's going to work, because in this case, instead of being hanging, it will be side-mounted. Okay, so other than that,
We got another question maybe for David. Just notice, what elevation? Sheet 8, south elevation. Starbucks really has 2 signs there, or is that a 26 and 27?
yeah.
So those, yeah, essentially that would be 2 separate signs. What we would do in this case would be Starbucks on the overhang would be the primary sign, and then we would identify the logo below it as the blade sign effectively, and they would not have any other type of blade sign permitted.
So 26 becomes a blade? And
Correct.
then the scale of that goes down? Or are we looking at that individually?
Well, and that would be something that we would have to consider individually. As far as the mounting of that sign onto that backing would be very difficult because it is a metal
Mesh.
it's a metal mesh that's the material there. So how that is done, we would probably have to take a closer look at that.
Yeah, probably need to have standoff.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so, Member Robert.
Mary, I don't know if I heard everything that you said, but sign number 23, which is on the west building elevation, sheet 7, it's an H&M sign. Did you say something about that?
No.
Okay, so I'd like to comment that I think that's way too big for that. I think that the size of that is huge for that wall and for where it is. And if you look at the plan, which is, you'll see they just have a little bit of a wall. It's right there.
Oh, it's there, it's showing it.
No, but it's H&M space.
Oh, yeah, it's wrong. Okay. So
Oh.
23.
Yeah, oh, yeah, it should.
Or maybe it is there. It's just
Oh.
branding H&M at that location.
Oh. Well, no, it looks.
because they'll
I-
put,
Yeah, no, I think it's right on the elevation, wrong on the plan. But I think that, to me, that looks like it's a drive-by, shopping mall, kind of sign. It's really huge for where it is and where it would be seen. I don't have so much trouble with the scale of the H&M on the Palm Canyon side, but this one I really think is too big.
I'm so sorry. 4?
Wonder if it's scaled right on the elevation, because it's only less than 6
Yeah.
foot high.
Yeah, but it's 9 feet wide,
Oh,
almost
yeah.
9 feet.
Yeah.
It's-
But if you look at elevation, it's almost square. It doesn't seem rectilinear. Wonder if this elevation is out of proportion.
Well, it's bigger than the Palm Canyon one. And it
Okay.
does look bigger than the Palm Canyon one.
Because the third sign that they have is much smaller because the portion of the building that it's on is much smaller. If they might be open to reducing this sign proportionately also, because not only is it on a pedestrian street, it really has no competition. There really aren't any other signs on the buildings there. So even if it's a smaller sign, it's going to stand out singularly because there's nothing else that looks like it or is close to that size, even in a smaller size. So yeah, I think it would, I totally agree, and I think we should just pose that question to them if they're open to reducing the size proportion to the space.
I disagree. I mean, we're looking at 58 linear feet. So if that signage becomes more like number 4, which is the number 4, which is on east elevation, I feel like it's going to get lost on that wall, because that wall is solid from ground up.
Well,
Anyway, so that's my immediate reaction, sorry.
well, I was thinking, you know, it could be something at a little more pedestrian scale, because the H&M space continues, you know, they've got the glass facade, and it could be located closer to where the glass is at a smaller scale and still have an impact.
Oh, I see. So it's now composing with the glass?
Yes.
Not as far as the wall?
Right,
Okay, I
right.
see. Okay. So, Member Robert, would you be looking at a proportion as equal as number 4?
Potentially, yes, if it's, yeah, potentially. Yeah, I think that would work.
Okay. So 90 inches by 60 inches. Okay, what other comments do we have?
I think it was also blade signs number 6, just as huge. That's also the H&M on Palm Canyon. So.
Yeah. I'm asking if that could just be one of the regular blade signages.
Yeah. And then the only other thing, I guess, is, which would be in line with what staff is recommending, is the Tommy Bahama duplication of signs, which is on, which elevation is that?
North elevation?
Yeah. Yes, on the north elevation, that be limited to 1.
It's a little challenging on that one, because 11 is parallel to the street, and then 10, isn't that more in an angle, is diagonal? If you look at the, yeah, so it's angled entry.
But maybe they could do it as a blade sign or something, you know, something, I don't know.
I think it needs to be what they propose, because it's further back. It's almost 2/3 of the way in from the face of the building. Oh, yeah, and remember, Gary's correct, there's a big tree on that planter.
So you wouldn't see the sign.
Yeah.
So hence, you know, why bother? Put one sign in and,
Well, I still think that that sign, it's okay, number 10. Because it's not on,
Isn't that their main entry sign?
that's the main entry sign.
Yeah, but you can put a blade sign on and replace 11 or eliminate 11. I kind of understand where you're coming from, Maria, but there's enough activity there, I'm not sure they're going to be lost for signage. There's enough recognition of what's happening there, I would think, that maybe 11 went away. Is that much harm to them?
I also think in the context of this site, you know, it's, is that Main Street? Is that what that's called? Main Street? The street to
Museum
the
Way.
north. Yes. Museum Way, sorry. So when you actually, because the sign is set back from Palm Canyon, it's up high, and it's a fairly narrow street, I don't know that sign, number 11, is going to have a whole lot of impact.
Not from vehicular, but maybe there's a,
Well, a blade sign would
Blade,
be,
yeah,
blade
for
sign would be a
pedestrian.
better option, I would think.
So the proposal is, instead of 11 become a blade signage. Yeah, it's more discreet. Okay, do we have a motion, guys?
I want to clarify to our recommendation on staff on the hanging sign details of number 5 and 28. Are we allowing staff to architecturally review and approve any kind of hanging brackets and details of that and mounting?
We could do that, or we can also do a subcommittee and review that design.
One of the things I might suggest, again, like the other sign applications we've seen, this will be going to Planning Commission. It does give the applicant the opportunity to propose a sign bracket that staff can then review and present to the Planning Commission. So there is another opportunity for that to be seen by the Planning Commission.
So we can request.
So we could approve based on further detail to planning?
Correct.
Yeah,
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 Correct.
that's good.
yeah, that's really good. Okay, so let me list out the items that we have discussed, and then we can do a motion. How's that? I know. I like to do things backwards. Okay. So on east elevation, we're saying that item number 6 should become a blade signage. On the north elevation, we're saying to eliminate number 11, and that becomes a blade signage. Yeah. We're also saying that on the north elevation, if any of those tenants are the same tenants, then they don't get to have duplicate signage. On west elevation, the same applies for 18 and 19. And on signage 23, we like them to match the proportions or the sizes of sign number 4.
So could you say that last one again, please?
Yes. Signage number 23 gets reduced to the size of signage number 4. Okay. In addition to that, we would like for the applicant to provide a design of the side-mounted details on the side blade, which should include a frame design and a mounting design that matches the architectural of the architecture style of the building. Most likely the Starbucks style. The frame, the steel. I think that's the one I could pick versus, because there's a number of different styles in here. Okay, and then the overall arching is that we understand the tenants that are coming in, the surface areas of the retail spaces, and therefore the square footages are being based as a aggregate total in comparison to the building and not to the four-sided box limitation. Anything I missed on that list?
I don't know if you meant to say that item 6 should be a blade sign. It already is a blade sign. We just need to have it smaller.
Right, yeah. Flynn, do you have that? I think it was one of the first ones. Number 6?
Yes, that was the first condition that you had identified, and it was my understanding that it would be reduced to the 24 by 36 size of
That's
all blade
correct.
signs.
Okay, Member
And
Randy.
what about, we talked briefly, I'm not sure you mentioned the double signage on Starbucks south elevation, 26, 27. We determined 26 was the blade?
26 counts as the blade, as far as the size goes.
Is staff aware of that?
Yeah. It's 4.5 feet by 5.5 feet, but in reality, there's a star with a line on the R, so it's not a solid 2 by 3 signage. So I'm saying that I'm okay with that.
So as drawn?
Yeah, as proposed.
Okay.
Yeah.
It would be a wall-mounted sign, but categorized in terms of its size as one of the blade signs, 24 by
Correct.
36.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Does
Does
that-
anybody care now?
Does that confuse future tenants? Is there definition of blade side on the size or it's mounting? Because blade sign seems like it's a mounting description, not,
What we will do in the condition is identify that the sign number 26 is a secondary sign, and it's limited to 24 by 36 inches in area. So that way we don't get confused.
in the future
Correct.
tenants try to argue that point or, okay, okay.
And that, just also so you're aware, number 2 on sheet 5 is a similar condition.
Oh, it is, isn't it? Yes.
Oh,
Well, that's a large,
yeah. So the way I was looking at it is, if you look at number 1 plus number 2, if you add the two together, they're still under the 69 total square foot. I don't know if that helps, or maybe we just look at it as, instead of 5 by 5, it becomes 4 by 4. So there's more wall material than the,
I think we have to set a precedence on number of signs per elevation because you're just opening up opportunities for other people to have 2 signs per elevation. I mean, other than a blade. Or is that a blade, number 2 a blade? Or is it based on a secondary? I
What-
guess I'm a little confused.
so 3 by, let me see, 2 by
One-
3 is 12.
Yeah, one thing to consider is that our sign ordinance, when you have a blade sign, it does give 2 separate measurements. When it's perpendicular to the street, then you can do, it's a smaller sign versus if it's flat on a wall, if you're doing what you would think if it's a blade sign, flat on a wall instead of the blade hanging, it usually can be bigger. So it allows 6 square feet double-sided or 9 square feet if it's a wall sign. So there's that other option sometimes.
What I might recommend is, just as you did with sign number 26, perhaps for sign number 2, you limit it to the same area and consider it as a secondary sign, so no larger than 6 square feet, which would be the same as 24 by 36. But because it's round, obviously, they need slightly different dimensions for it.
That seems appropriate to me because it's a secondary sign with a dimension set to it. It's not defined as a blade or a tenant sign. It's all based on square footage, if I understand.
It's pi r square.
So,
Oh, okay.
so
It would still
what
work.
executes a secondary sign? What if all tenants want a secondary sign? So how does that fall into play? We're allowing it in some cases and not others.
Here's how I would justify it, is that the tenants are allowed to have a blade sign, which becomes their secondary sign. Starbucks being unique in that they want to essentially put it on the wall surface itself. So I think there's a certain degree of parity between the two. It's just that Starbucks is mounting theirs on the wall.
So all tenants really are getting secondary signs, a blade or a wall mount base. Okay, makes sense.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's a smaller, it's a tiny bit smaller area, because this will be a round signage. Okay. All right, so we added that, and so the motion is to approve the project with those conditions to move to the planning commission. Anyone second that?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, any additional committee member comments? So much better with microphone. Having said that,
Sorry, I have to get out of here. I have to be somewhere.
okay, so it's 5:54 and we are adjourned.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.